Ahoj! Welcome to my new video where you will learn a really useful Czech construction. Have you ever heard someone say Chce se mi spát? Nechce se mi nikam chodit. Chce se mi spát means I feel like sleeping. I want to sleep. And when you look at it, the way the sentence is made is a little strange. Chce se mi spát. Where is já in this? I want to sleep. Chce se mi spát. Chce means it wants. So how does this work? The way this sentence is built is very different than in English. I is expressed in a different case and it's right here. Mi, which means to me. The literal translation would be something like it wants to me sleep. I feel like sleeping. So what do you need to do to make this construction? You will need the verb chtít. This verb chtít will be in the ono form or to form. So third person singular and neuter form. So you're saying it wants, which doesn't make sense, but you know, in Czech we have a lot of impersonal phrases. It feels cold to me, je mi zima. This is very similar except with the verb chtít. So you are saying chce, it wants. Then to express what is it you want to do is simply the verb in the infinitive form, but with se, which from the video from last week, you might remember that this is a reflexive verb. It's not really a passive voice. It's saying impersonally that it feels like sleeping to you. And then, if it's you who feels like sleeping, then you put mi, which is já in the dative form. Ugh. This sounds horrible. I bet that if you hear this for the first time, you will not want to use it ever again. So my recommendation is to learn a couple of phrases that I will show you in this video and memorize them. Use them if you find the right opportunity, and it will also help you understand other people when they say sentences such as this. Chce se mi spát. I feel like sleeping. I want to sleep. Of course, we can also say chci spát. This is a more indirect version. You're saying, oh, it would be good to sleep. I have this feeling that I want to sleep. You're saying that something that just came over to you and it's very difficult to handle this feeling, this emotion, just like the sleepiness. Oh, chce se mi spát.
Chce se mi spát, chce se mi spát, chce se mi spát. Spát se mi chce. Co se mi chce? Spát. Spát se mi co? Chce. Komu se chce spát? Mně ne.
This was a famous scene from a Czech fairy tale movie, Byl jednou, jeden král, when the king is trying to sleep and he's trying to convince himself he wants to sleep. Now, what about this phrase? You can also say, I don't feel like doing something. You simply add ne in front of this verb. Nechce, again, third person, in the to form. Nechce, and then the verb is chodit se, which is to go somewhere. I don't feel like going anywhere. Nechce se mi nikam chodit. I don't want to go anywhere. All the elements are here, except here we also added nikam, nowhere. Nechce se mi nikam chodit. Now get ready for more phrases like this. Jdeme na to. Ahoj, vítejte na mém kanále Czech by Zuzka, kde vám pomocí angličtiny vysvětluju českou gramatiku. You might be surprised with the selection of phrases I put here, but I was actually looking for inspiration in the Czech corpus, which shows common phrases used in literature. When I read it, I agreed that this is something that we often say. So there is a mixture of very interesting phrases. And you have to keep in mind that this phrase, chce se mi, often talks about urgent needs or feelings that just come to you and you have to deal with them somehow. So we often talk about our biological needs. But let's start with emotions. Chce se mi brečet. I feel like crying. Chce se mi brečet. So I explained how the sentence is made. You know that brečet goes together with se and that mi is dative. Chce is in the third person, but for practical purposes, I would just say that you learn chce se mi, knowing that mi refers to já, and then you just add any infinitive or the rest of the sentence you need. Chce se mi blah blah blah. So, chce se mi brečet, I feel like crying. Next one is chce se mi smát. I feel like laughing, although this one is not that common. When something is funny, you can say chce se mi smát, ale nemůžu. I feel like laughing, but I can't. Now, if you need to go to the bathroom and it's safe to say it to your friends or to your family, you can just say chce se mi čůrat. This is very useful. Don't say it in public to people you don't know. They would not be amused, or they would, who knows. Čůrat means to pee, but it's so common to use it with this phrase. Chce se mi čůrat. And related to this biological need, you can also say chce se mi na záchod. You probably know that záchod is not the most proper way to say toilet. I need to go to the bathroom. Záchod is something like the loo, not a very nice word to use in public. But again, it's completely fine to use it with your family and friends. It's very informal. And you might be wondering why there is no verb. Because the verb is left out. It could be here, but it's commonly left out. Chce se mi jít na záchod. I want to go to the bathroom. But it's common to leave these words out when we have a modal verb or a phrase like this. I also made a video about this a few months ago. You can watch it here. And now, the important sentence that you definitely don't say in public, but it's important when you have a child that speaks Czech, or you need to communicate these things with people that are close to you. Na velkou. Chce se mi na velkou is very similar to this previous one, or this phrase. Na velkou means to go number 2. So I want to go poop. In Czech we say jít na malou, to go number 1, jít na velkou, to go number 2. And this is the same concept. Also, the verb jít was left out. And we almost never say it with this verb. Chce se mi na velkou. So if you're with a child that speaks Czech and you're near the bathroom, you can ask them chce se ti jít čůrat or chce se ti čůrat. Chce se ti na velkou. These phrases are very important. So you know that dative is related with this phrase, and we've been using mi for me, but of course if you want to say you want to go or you feel like doing something, then you use ti or other persons. So I have these study tables which are part of my ebook Just in Case, where I talk about the grammatical cases, and these are the forms of pronouns in the dative. So we can go through the short forms. You want to ask someone, do you feel like crying? Do you want to cry? You would say chce se ti brečet. He feels like crying. Chce se mu brečet. Chce se jí brečet. She feels like crying. Chce se nám brečet. We feel like crying. Chce se vám brečet, you guys, or you formal, feel like crying. Chce se jim brečet. We could also use the forms for the emphasis. That's when the pronoun would be at the beginning. It would be isolated because there would be emphasis on it. So you could ask almost in disbelief, tobě se chce brečet. You feel like crying. Tobě se chce brečet. Instead of ti, you cannot put ti in here when it's isolated. Or a kid would usually say, mně se chce čůrat. Mně se chce čůrat. I want to pee. Or imagine there is a field trip with small children and the teacher asks the kids when they're near the bathrooms, who wants to go pee? So they would ask, komu se chce čůrat? Komu se chce čůrat? And again, you can find these phrases in my ebook here. Komu is the dative for kdo, who. Who feels like. Komu se chce čůrat? Komu se chce na velkou? Komu se chce na záchod? And of course, you could also have negative form here. Nechce se mi čůrat. And although it's on my list, I forgot to write it here. Also, a very common verb that you could also use with this is zvracet, which means to throw up. Also important. Chce se mi zvracet. If you hear someone say this, you either run or you help the person. Zvracet. So let's leave these biological needs aside. You can also use it for some activities. Some verbs work really well with this construction. Some are just not used very commonly. You have to hear enough examples and develop a feeling what works and what doesn't. But speaking about these short forms and the long forms that we use for emphasis, let me give you an example here. Let's say you want to say, I don't feel like doing it. So you can say, nechce se mi to dělat. I don't feel like doing it, where me is the short form. Or you could emphasize, I really don't feel like doing it. So you would say, mně. Mně se to nechce dělat. The rest would be the same. Mně se to nechce dělat. Now that you're more familiar with this phrase, I would like to show you how it works in the past tense. All those sentences I showed you previously were in the present tense. I feel like, I want. The past tense would be exactly the same, except the verb chtít would be in the past tense and in the third person neuter form. Chtělo se mi zvracet. I felt like throwing up. Chtělo again refers to to in the past tense. Everything else is exactly the same. So dative is here and here is the infinitive form with se. Chtělo se mi zvracet. I felt like throwing up. Chtělo se mi odejít. I felt like leaving. I wanted to leave. This doesn't have to always be translated with I feel like or I felt like. Sometimes in English it works better just to say I want, although it's expressed indirectly. Chtělo se mi odejít. I wanted to leave. And you can also use the negative form nechtělo se nám. I used a different pronoun here. Nám refers to me. We didn't want to be there. We didn't feel like being there. Nechtělo se nám tam být. Nechtělo se nám tam být. So this is how easily you use the past tense. The past tense is also closely related to the conditional. The form is very similar. So I also want to give you an example in the conditional the same way, just like the past tense. We make nechtělo and then we add by. Nechtělo by se mi tady čekat. I wouldn't want to wait here. This is a phrase that you would want to say to someone who's been waiting somewhere and you want to tease them. I wouldn't want to be waiting here. Nechtělo by se mi tady čekat. But again, expressed indirectly. Something like I wouldn't like to wait here. Nechtělo by se mi tady čekat. And also, we talked about these negative questions 2 weeks ago. So if you want to suggest to someone, would you like to? And then, for example, you ask about a chore that's not pleasant. So you can ask very indirectly with this as well. Nechtělo by se ti umýt okna? Would you want to clean the windows? Maybe. Nechtělo by se ti umýt okna? Or even a simple question like, would you like to wait for me? Would you want? Nechtělo by se ti na mě počkat? So these constructions are handy, but it can also get a little messy because you can see there are more elements that are typical for the informal Czech. All these elements I've already talked about in my previous videos, so it's really helpful if you take a look at them. Now you must be wondering, how does this work in the future tense? And I will tell you, it works perfectly fine. You only put the verb to want in the future. So you add bude in this case, because chtít is an imperfective verb, so we need bude plus the infinitive. Sometimes we will end up with 2 infinitives, but that's completely okay. Let's take a look at the first sentence. Bude se mi chtít na záchod. Brzo. Soon. I will want to go to the bathroom. And again, keep in mind, záchod is a very informal word. Bude se mi chtít. So mi is the dative and chtít, that's the verb in the future tense together with bude. So bude chtít, remember it refers to to, bude chtít. Se plus the missing jít, to go, which we left out. And we usually don't use it in this case. So se jít, bude se mi chtít jít na záchod. The rest of the sentence. Bude se ti to chtít říkat? Will you want to say it? Will you feel like saying it? The same components. Bude se and then chtít and then the infinitive. So any sentence that you have in the present tense can be also expressed in the future, in the past, and with the conditional construction. No more explanation, I think you've seen enough. Now it's time for the final activity. These sentences are written with the verb to want, but they don't contain se and no dative. And I want you to use the construction chtít chce plus dative and the infinitive. For example, here, chci spát, I want to sleep, and you would say chce se mi spát. So remember, here we use the to form, we add se, and then the form in the dative. Depends who says this. You can work on this alone, you can pause the video, work on this and then check with me. Or you can just follow the activity with me. I am going to start right now. Číslo 1. Chceš to uklízet? Do you want to clean it? So here we are asking about ty. Chceš to uklízet? Chceš ty to uklízet? We would start by chce again, because we have to talk about it. Chce se, and then we have to say to you, the dative, chce se ti to uklízet. The rest of the sentence will be exactly the same. Do you feel like cleaning it up? Číslo 2. Nechci vstávat. I don't feel like getting up. This is about me, but it's negative. So we would say nechce se mi. The verb is the same. Vstávat. Nechce se mi vstávat. I don't feel like getting up. 3. Nechtěla to vysvětlovat. So here the subject is ona. She didn't want to explain it. And vysvětlovat is also imperfective. She didn't want to be explaining it. We would say nechtělo. This is past tense. Nechtělo. And the rest is just like here. Nechtělo se, and then the dative for her is jí. Nechtělo se jí to vysvětlovat. I'll just put dots here because the rest is the same. Nechtělo se jí to vysvětlovat. She didn't feel like explaining it. Číslo 4. Nechtěl bych to opakovat. I wouldn't want to repeat it. Or I wouldn't like to repeat it. Depends on the context. So here is já. And we have conditional phrase. So it's very similar to this one. Nechtělo, we have to add by first. Nechtělo by se, then mi. Nechtělo by se mi to opakovat. The rest is the same. Nechtělo by se mi to opakovat. Poslední, číslo 5. My to nebudeme chtít dělat. We will not want to do it. And I put me here because we want to emphasize this. We will want to use the dative in the form typical for the emphasis. So we will not want to do it. This time we will actually start by the dative, by that dative form, nám. For this particular pronoun, the forms are the same. They're both nám in the short form and also in this emphatic form. Okay, then what? Then se has the priority, has to come here. Nám se to. And then we say nebude. Nám se to nebude chtít dělat. The rest is the same. So here is if we emphasize this. We will not feel like doing it. Maybe they will want to do it. Nám se to nebude chtít dělat. If we didn't want to emphasize it, the form would still be the same for this pronoun, but the word order would be different. So without emphasis, it would be nebude se nám to chtít dělat. Nebude se nám to chtít dělat. This is all for me. Although this topic was quite narrow, I talked a bit about grammar, so it might be overwhelming for some of you. I recommend watching it again, making some notes, memorizing a couple of useful phrases. And I have one announcement for those of you that are on a pre-intermediate or elementary level. Maybe you remember my video course, Explore the Art of Original Czech Conversing, which is available on Udemy. This course contains over 3.5 hours of video lessons where I introduce 11 dialogues and I explain grammar in context. And there are also a few grammatical chapters. This course is very helpful. A lot of people liked it, and I created an ebook that goes with it, and this is something I just finished. This ebook has 87 pages and it follows the structure of the course. There are a lot of activities that will help you practice the newly acquired vocabulary and phrases in this course. And there is quite a bit of information on grammar that's related to these dialogues and exercises to practice this grammar. So if you need to practice more Czech, practical Czech that you can use in an everyday situation, such as going to the post office and sending a package or making an appointment, rescheduling a meeting or introducing a friend, you will learn all these phrases and practice a lot of content in the video course and the ebook. This package, this ebook and the video course is now on discount until the end of next week. So please check it out if you don't have this course yet. To je ode mě všechno. Mějte se krásně a děkuji, že jste se dívali. Uvidíme se za týden. Ahoj.